The car in your driveway has not moved from the same spot in 10 years. Same make, same model. Same small dent above the rear wheel well that you keep meaning to fix and never do. You make $94,000 a year. The person who parks next to you at the office makes the same. You started the same September, got the same raises, drive to the same building, eat lunch at the same time, go to sleep with the same alarm set. 10 years later, one of you has a car payment. The other has something nobody at that office can see, nobody has ever asked about, and nobody would guess from looking at the car in the driveway. Nothing dramatic separated you. One afternoon in a dealership parking lot, one decision got made that felt like nothing at all. One of those decisions is still compounding right now. And the one that is compounding is not the one that felt like progress. It starts the same way for both of them. The lease on the car you drove through your 20s is up. 114,000 miles. Check engine light came on twice last year. Both times it was nothing. Air conditioning works. Heat works. The car is fine. A coworker mentions a dealership on Route 9. 0% financing for 18 months. You test drive something 4 years newer and it feels quieter, tighter. You sit in the parking lot afterward and tell yourself this is the practical decision, the responsible one. A car with that many miles is a liability. A new payment is manageable. You run the numbers in your head and they make sense. You sign. $412 a month. You drive home feeling like someone who made a reasonable adult decision. That feeling is real. It will cost you something you cannot see yet. In the other version of that same afternoon, you drive the old car home. Not because you ran a spreadsheet. Not because you read an article. You drove it home because it works. And you have $400 a month and you would rather decide where it goes than let a dealership decide for you. You set up an automatic transfer that evening. $400. Somewhere separate. You do not tell anyone. There is nothing to tell. You make dinner. You go to sleep. Both versions of you park in the same lot Monday morning. From the outside, the gap between these two lives is invisible. From the inside, it opened on a Friday and has not stopped opening since. Because $400 a month does not feel like a wealth decision when you make it. It feels like a car decision. And that framing is exactly what makes it expensive. Here is what starts happening the moment you sign. In the first year alone, the car drops roughly 20% of its purchase value. Not because anything went wrong, because that is what happens to new cars the moment they leave the lot. You financed a $26,500 vehicle. By the third payment, the loan balance is higher than what the car is worth. You are paying interest on something worth less than what you owe. Nobody at the dealership mentioned this. It was somewhere in the paperwork. The version of you with the old car in the driveway does not know any of this on a Tuesday morning. That version of you is just living a life where $400 moves somewhere quietly every month that no one thinks to ask about. But something else is happening in that version that is harder to name. No car payment means room. When the water heater breaks in October, that version of you writes the check without restructuring anything. When the raise disappears into a budget freeze at work, that version absorbs it without cutting anything essential. The absence of a payment is not a strategy. It does not feel like discipline. It just means there is more space than there otherwise would be every single month in every direction. Space to breathe. Space to act. Space to wait. That is the first thing nobody tells you about keeping a paid-off car. The freedom is not in the account. It is in the room. The upgrade cycle does not feel like a trap when you are inside it. The system designs itself to feel inevitable. Every year a new model drops. The dealerships run promotions timed to the moment your lease expires. The financing exists specifically to make the number feel small. And the people around you, the coworkers, the neighbors, the people whose cars you see in the same parking lot every morning, are mostly inside the same cycle. Nobody is pressuring you. Nobody says anything directly. The pressure is structural. Upgrading is the default. Staying put requires a decision that nobody in the system has any incentive to encourage. That is why both versions of you made the choice that felt reasonable. The upgrade felt reasonable because it got designed to feel reasonable. The transfer felt reasonable because $400 to a separate account is not a dramatic move. Neither choice required willpower. Neither required sacrifice. The difference was just which current you decided to swim in. One current is built by an industry that profits from your monthly payment. The other is built by math that profits from being left alone. Here is what nobody tells you about the first car payment. It is not the last one. By the time you pay off the loan, the car has 80,000 miles and a friend sends a link to a hybrid version of the same model. The dealership is doing something with rates. You are making more than you were 5 years ago. The payment would be roughly the same as what you just finished paying. You run the same calculation in the same parking lot and it makes the same kind of sense it made the first time. You upgrade again, 60 more months, $461 a month. That is the pattern, not one decision. A repeating decision that looks identical every time it happens because every time it happens it is completely reasonable. Completely reasonable is not the same as free. In the other version of this life, the old car crossed 200,000 miles sometime in the spring. You had the transmission inspected. $420. You paid it the week you would have made a car payment and thought nothing of it. The car runs, you keep going. The $400 that started moving 5 years ago now shows a balance that surprises you when you actually look at it. You do not check it often. That is almost the point. Here is what 10 years of that decision quietly built. $400 a month placed into a broad low-cost account tracking the overall market starting in 2015 and running through 2025 grew to somewhere around $83,000. That number includes a trade war, a pandemic, a historic bear market, 2 separate crashes of more than 30%. The account absorbed all of it and still averaged close to 12% annually across the decade because nobody touched it. Nobody pulled it out when the headlines turned dark. Nobody redirected it toward a newer car. It just sat there, moving the same direction it always moves when you leave it alone long enough. $83,000. From $400 a month. From a Friday decision that felt like nothing at the time. The version of you with the car payments does not have that number. That version has 2 paid-off loans and a vehicle worth somewhere between $7,000 and $9,000. After a decade of payments, the net worth position on transportation is barely positive. Look at those 2 numbers side by side and feel the distance between them. Now here is the number nobody shows you when you are standing in a dealership signing a loan. The gap between what you paid into those 2 car loans and what the cars were worth when you paid them off is roughly $30,000. That gap is not a mistake in the math, it is interest. It is dealer margin. It is premium adjustments for insuring something newer. Every dollar of it went somewhere. None of it built anything that works for you. $30,000 placed into the same account at the start of 2015 and left there would be worth approximately $93,000 today. That is the number that never appears on a financing agreement. Not the monthly payment which is manageable. Not the total paid which feels like the cost of ownership. The invisible number is what those dollars would have become if they had compounded instead of depleted. Most people never see it because it does not exist in any document associated with the purchase. It lives in the math that nobody runs. It is the number you only find if you go looking for it years later, sitting in a car you are still paying for, wondering where the decade went. Those are 2 separate numbers measuring 2 separate things. The $93,000 is what the interest gap alone would have built if it had compounded instead of going to a lender. The $83,000 is what the monthly transfer actually built from $400 moving quietly every month for 10 years. They do not add together. They are 2 different ways of seeing the same decision from 2 different angles. Either one of them on its own changes how you think about the car in the driveway. The version of you who kept the old car has the $83,000, the paid-off car. No transportation debt going forward. And something else that does not appear on any balance sheet. No obligation, no payment committed to a lender every month for the next 4 years. When the opportunity comes, when the job offer lands, when something worth acting on finally appears, the version of you without a car payment can move. The version still inside a loan has to calculate whether moving is affordable first. Here is what that actually looks like on a Tuesday morning. It is 2022. 7 years into the transfer. Markets are down 30% from their peak. Every financial headline is telling you to act, to protect what you have built, to move it somewhere safer before it drops further. The version of you without a car payment does not move it. Not because of superior knowledge, not because of discipline that the other version lacks, because there is no pressure. The bills get paid, the $400 goes into the account the same week it always does, even while the balance is temporarily lower than it was 6 months ago. There is no emergency forcing a decision, so no decision gets made. The account absorbs the correction the way accounts do when you leave them alone. When the market recovers, as it always has across every previous correction in recorded history, the shares bought during the drawdown are now worth more than the ones bought at the peak. The version of you with a car payment in 2022 faces those same headlines with a different kind of pressure. The payment comes out regardless of what markets do. The loan does not pause for bear markets. The obligation does not move whether the account is up or down. That is the cost nobody calculates in the dealership parking lot. Not just the interest paid, not just the depreciation absorbed, the reduced flexibility at the exact moments when flexibility has the most value. Most people build wealth in accounts nobody can see by skipping obligations nobody told them to skip. That is not a dramatic insight. It is just the arithmetic of keeping $400 a month working for you instead of for someone else. Wealth that nobody sees is partly made of things you do not owe. It is 2025. Both versions of you are 42. You wake up, you make coffee. You drive to the same building you have been driving to for the better part of a decade. Same city, same job title, same kind of morning. From the outside, these two lives are nearly impossible to tell apart. Write the numbers down. One version of you has a vehicle worth roughly $12,000, a remaining loan balance of around $7,000, and a net worth position on transportation that is barely above zero. A new lease starts in the spring. The cycle is ready to run again. The math will make sense again because it always does. The other version of you has a car worth $6,000, no loan, and a balance in a separate account that crossed $80,000 sometime last year without any announcement, without any conversation, without appearing anywhere that other people can see. That number exists because of a Friday that felt like nothing. The gap between those two positions is not income. Both people made the same salary for 10 years. The gap is a repeating decision that looked reasonable every single time it got made, and compounded in one direction the entire time without asking for attention. Now follow both versions forward. The version with the cycle will spend another $30,000 to $40,000 over the next decade on vehicles worth a fraction of that at the end of each loan. The pattern runs because it always feels responsible in the moment. The car is reliable. The payment fits the budget. Nobody questions it because everyone around them does the same. On the other side, the old car will eventually need replacing. When that day comes, you replace it in cash because 10 years of $400 a month has produced a number large enough to buy a used car outright and continue the transfer on whatever remains. The account does not stop when the car changes. The habit is older than any specific vehicle, and the compounding does not care what is in the driveway. It just keeps running. Think about what that looks like 20 years from now. The version of you that stayed in the upgrade cycle has been at this for 3 decades. Still employed, still earning, still fine by every visible measure. Still making a car payment because the pattern ran 4 more times after 2025. Still carrying a loan that does not clear for another few years. Looking at retirement with a brokerage account that exists but never got the consistent input it needed because $400 a month went somewhere else for most of 3 decades. Not broke, not behind in any way anyone would name at a dinner party. The house is paid for. The retirement account exists. Every decision made was normal and defensible, and the life looks fine from the outside, just never fully free of the payment. Always one cycle from the next one. Always 60 days from the next dealership visit that will make complete sense when it arrives. The version of you that kept the old car has not made a car payment since 2015. The account that started with $400 a month in 2015 and absorbed the correction in 2022 and kept running has a balance that does not feel like a number someone in a paid-off 10-year-old car would have. But it is, because the car was not the point. The car was just the thing that made the payment disappear. What replaced the payment was time. Time for the account to run. Time for the balance to compound. Time for the same money that bought someone else a newer dashboard and a wireless charging pad to become something that no lender has any claim on. That is the only difference between these two versions of the same life. Not intelligence, not income, not timing. Just the decision about where $400 a month went for a long time. Here is the last thing. There is a specific feeling that arrives the month after you pay off a car loan. Not excitement. Something quieter. The realization that a line item you have been staring at for 5 years is simply gone. The money is still in the account. The car still runs. Nothing changed except a payment stopped leaving. Most people feel that for about 30 days. Then the dealership sends something in the mail and the calculation starts again. The version of this life that built something did it by sitting with that feeling longer than 30 days. By leaving the $400 in place when every instinct said to redirect it toward the next thing. By deciding that the end of the payment was not a green light to upgrade, but the moment when the account finally had room to move. That version of you did not sacrifice anything with a name, did not go without, did not drive something broken or embarrassing, drove a paid-off car through a decade while something in a separate account did what money does when you stop giving it somewhere else to be. Think about the car you drove before the one you have now. It ran. You got rid of it because something felt ready, not because anything was wrong. Because the upgrade was available and the payment was manageable and nobody around you questioned whether you needed it. That car is still on the road somewhere. Someone bought it used. That person is driving around right now in the car you paid down and traded in, building equity on something that already had most of its depreciation behind it, making a payment smaller than the one you signed for instead. They got the better end of that transaction. The car is still in the driveway. The account is still running. Nobody at the office knows the number. The only question now is what you decide to do with the payment you are making right now.